Whether it's our own personal circumstances with families and friends, or it's through the news of another, sometimes life just slaps us right in the face. And it's one of those days in college football. And closer to home here for Buckeye Nation, of course, CARNELL Tate's mother has been fatally shot, killed in Chicago. Just there's no way to put it into words. There's no way to make sense of it, except for these happenings or occurrences there in that particular city practically every day. And again, it hits closer to home hearing the news that came down late last night. This is Buckeyes Live here at the Voice of College Football. We will talk football for the next 60 minutes. We also wanted to honor and pay our condolences to CARNELL Tate as well. Kevin, I don't expect you to be able to put any kind of spin on this that's in any way inspiring or otherwise. We just obviously need to pay some sort of respect here. And it's just unthinkable and it's horrible.
Yeah, CARNELL Tate's mother, Ashley Griggs, 40 years old, was in West Garfield Park, suburb of Chicago, or proximity to Chicago. And apparently, according to news reports, there was a drive-by shooting. Multiple people were shot. Ashley Griggs was shot multiple times and succumbed to her wounds. I mean, very, senseless tragedy. I think that everybody around college football world and beyond, sends their love and prayers and positive energy toward CARNELL Tate and the family and friends and everybody that Ashley Griggs touched the life of in her too short 40 years on this earth. And, I remembered seeing kind of like an anonymous tweet about it on Sunday, and I sent it to Tom and Tony over at Huddle, and I said, I don't know who this poster is. I really hope it's not true. And then as time started to go on a little bit, we started to uncover a little bit more and a little bit more, and then finally got it confirmed. And it was just like awful. I mean, I don't even know what else to say about it.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
CARNELL Tate is now like in a club that nobody wants to be in, and the thing is, he's not the only Buckeye that has lost a parent on this team. Or even the head coach lost his father way too young, and so it's obviously a terrible time. It's a difficult time. I think the one thing is he'll be able to, when he comes back to the team, he'll have guys who have been through similar or not like this, but have dealt with loss. And so there'll be so much support for him in Columbus and on his team and around the program to hopefully continue to build him up and get him through this.
Yeah, just echo what Kevin and Tony said. Really heartfelt condolences going out to CARNELL Tate and his family. I believe I recall seeing CARNELL with his mom at Ohio State's camp a year ago, maybe last June, when they were trying to make the decision of where he wanted to go to college. And, they were sold, and she was sold on Brian Hartline and what he was going to do for her son. And obviously from Chicago, played at IMG. And, now at Ohio State, had a great spring. And I think this is a case where obviously for him, he'll have the warmth and the comfort of his teammates and his coaches and a complete support system around him to try and help him cope with this. But you're never going to get past this moment. I mean, it's always going to be there with you for the rest of your life. So it's just, something you have to live with. And this is when, God puts people around you to try and help you cope and get through moments like this. And, we can talk about society and different things like that. But again, just my feelings go out to him, and right here he should be the happiest, greatest moment, great time of his life. and this happens. And again, a lesson for all of us, just don't take today for granted, and definitely make sure you tell your loved ones that you care about them.
As Kevin said, a far too short life of 40 years. Wow. So, folks, we will move on from here and leave your comments and questions there in the chat. And we will, again, keep CARNELL Tate, his family, his friends, everyone close to him, as Kevin stated, in thoughts, prayers, positive energy as we go forward. All right. We do have Big Ten Media Days coming up next Wednesday and Thursday. Folks, we will not do the show as regularly scheduled next week because of Big Ten Media Days. We will do a show. We're looking at next Friday after Big Ten Media Days, so we, of course, can review what was said. And Kevin, I guess we'll go back to you in regards to what you would like to have stated at or responded to at Big Ten Media Days. What are you most looking to get out of coaches and players, and who, in fact, is headed to Media Days for the Buckeyes?
Wow, you asked me all of that too fast. I was sitting there starting to work on who it is that what I want to hear. I know Marvin Harrison Jr., JT, and I think it's a second offensive guy. Quit testing me, Tony.
Kate Stover.
Kate Stover. There you go.
I should know that. So
I got you back,
on the spot. I should already know that. I should have looked that up.
Well, yeah. And I was just kind of looking at a comment from Jordan Kapler about any fundraisers for the CARNELL Tate family. I know that there's some things that are being discussed, but until I see them, I don't know. But I know everybody here will put them out on social media when they see any sort of fundraisers for CARNELL Tate's family. But I think over and above everything else, I have the the view of wanting to see what Northwestern is going to do at Big Ten Media Days with all of its issues going on and everything else. That's really where my curiosity is going to take me, and wanting to see how that is going to be handled. I want to hear what the new Big Ten commissioner just has to say, first of all, because I haven't really heard much with him beyond an introductory press conference. The state of media rights deals and what he's had to do to kind of clean up the mess of Kevin Warren at the end. View on conference expansion. Greg Sankey kind of took some thinly veiled shots at other leagues in terms of where they are with expansion. While I don't expect this to turn into some sort of war of words, I would really like to see what he may say there. And then for Ohio State, why don't you just give us your starting lineups right now, and scores would help too, because then I have all of August to pre-write stories then. But in all seriousness, I kind of have been joking internally with some friends about, it was just a couple years ago that Jim Harbaugh kind of delivered, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember the exact quote, about beating Ohio State or die trying or whatever. Well, they've won the last two since that has happened at that point. So are we going to see any grandiose statements from Ohio State to try and pull the mighty momentum lever back in its direction?
I'm just grabbing a quick bite here because I'm between assignments, but Matt Rule, Nebraska, are you really understanding what you're in for there when the homegrown guy, Scott Frost, couldn't get it done? How do you expect an outsider to go in there and get it done? Luke Fickell, Wisconsin, you took Cincinnati to the playoff. Can you do that at Wisconsin? Well, it'd be a lot easier with a 12-team playoff, certainly, but in the beginning next year. But I agree with Kevin. I want to hear what the new commissioner has to say about the state of the world, if he'll take the time to answer those questions. And I was the one who did the expose on the Marvin Harrison hit in the Georgia game, and Bill Carollo, among many others, had no comment about that. He usually sits down for about 30 minutes. And so I'm going to raise my hand and say, what was your take on that? And what they do right, what they do wrong, and let the chips fall where they may. So there you go.
The conversation with Carrillo is always interesting because there's new rules being implemented, and you get to talk to the head guy of the Big Ten, and so there's always something that comes out from that. I'm looking forward, I guess, to finally being able to recognize Tony Petitti in a crowd because I couldn't do it right now yet. So I think watching him talk for like 30 minutes will imprint on my brain who he is and what he looks like, and then maybe I'll be able to pick him out of a crowd. In terms of Ohio State, I don't know. I don't know that we're going to learn anything new. Because we talked to the coaches like 6 weeks ago, so we got all of our post spring updates, and all the questions and answers right now are just going to be, well, they're working hard. They worked hard in summer, and they're lifting weights and things like that, and so I don't know what we're going to learn from there. I do know that we're going to ask questions, so hopefully something comes out of it. But the rest of the Big Ten, and it's always fun watching Kirk Ferentz defend his son, his baby boy, and so I'm sure that will continue next week as well. And how I guess one of the interesting things about doing this is when you go and after the coaches talk in front of the TV, then they'll go and do an hour session like later that day or immediately after, where you can like sit and stand around them and talk to them. Now, like Jim Harbaugh and Brian Day always have a crowd of people, so it's hard to like get in there and like have back and forth. But I'm just interested to see how much more conversational Jim Harbaugh is, because over the years he's gone from like confrontational or non-responsive to maybe more conversational. So I'm wondering if how much he's feeling his oats right now. Brett Bielema used to always be fantastic at these things, but then he went to Arkansas and got humbled. So he's a little bit more boring now, but maybe after last year we can start to gas him up and see what happens.
Our Iowa guy, Corey Bretta, noted that Kirk Ferentz was the only coach out of the 14 this time last year after the USC-UCLA announcement that was not asked about the entry of those two schools into the league. I don't know that it's probably coincidence, but it does seem to impact those schools, that tier of team, more so than, of course, the bottom feeders. It doesn't matter who else they're going to get beat up by. And of course, the elite should be fine. But that Iowa program gets impacted by two good programs coming into the conference, and of course the split up of the divisions. And it was noted that really wants to see a response to USC and UCLA by Kirk Ferentz. And JJ McCarthy, it was noted in the chat, not representing the team up north. Maybe a bit curious, since that's the guy everyone wants to talk to concerning Michigan.
Ohio State's sending a junior and Marvin Harrison, and they sent did CJ Stroud go last year? I don't remember, as a redshirt sophomore.
Yeah, because the big thing that came out at this point last year was that the football team could beat the men's basketball team in a pickup game or something like that, and they dangled that low fruit, and we all started salivating like Pavlovian dogs, and all had to run around and do stuff on that. But CJ certainly had his thoughts about that.
As it turned out, he was not far off. So,
I do think has anybody seen Ohio State picked over Michigan in any outlet or anything? I saw Josh Mustachio that this will be the first year since 2012 Michigan will probably be ranked ahead of. But in terms of the magazine, Steve did. I have not seen my Whole Wagon Weekly, so my apologies. I have not looked at it yet.
That's called Steve Says. That's his big feature. Steve Says.
Yeah,
but like all of the magazines have Michigan.
Yeah. Well, they said the media vote in 24/7 was 10 votes for Michigan and 9 for Ohio State. So there were a few people in our poll at 24/7 out of 19 media people covering the Big Ten that did pick Ohio State over Michigan. But and that was exactly what the count was to win the Big Ten too. To win the East, 10-9. To win the Big Ten overall, 10-9. So there you go.
Joel Klatt, I believe, is picking Ohio State to win the Natty. So I would assume in that potentially
Smart man.
he's picking Ohio State to win the league, even though you don't have to now. I mean, and it'll be even different in the 12-team playoff. But
look what happened last year.
Not required.
Not even advised. Just get in without playing that extra game. Although those days are kind of over. I do wonder. You're talking about Iowa, Mark. Like, who is hurt? Who is hurt most? Like, is it by the transfer over of USC and UCLA? Is it like Iowa's near the top of the list? So I mean, I don't think Kirk Ferentz would ever say, "Yeah, this is killing us. It's going to kill us." But what hurts most? Bringing those two schools in or going divisionless, because I think it's kind of the same thing, because those two teams would have been in the same division as Iowa. I think can Wisconsin overcome the introduction of USC, and we'll see if UCLA can get into the mix as a playoff team.
I think there's a layer of teams out west, or in the West Division, I should say, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin. Again, the other ones I don't consider because they're never competitive or rarely competitive. Purdue, of course, won the division last year, and Illinois, popped up. They were probably the best team in the division, but I think that layers hurt the most, and I think Iowa out of that layers hurt the most because they're a more consistent winner than any of those other teams. And I think Wisconsin is better equipped and prepared with Luke Fickell going forward to challenge. So I think Iowa's getting hit. This is just speculation, of course, on my part, but Iowa would be my number one target, is taking the hit more than anyone else.
I got a lot of thoughts here, so I'll try and be quick on each one of them so I don't dominate the time. But I see you, Tony. Every time the Big Ten brings in a new team, well, maybe save Rutgers and Maryland, they have these delusions of running stuff. We're going to come into the Big Ten and run stuff. Penn State certainly thought coming out from its independent status was going to come into the Big Ten and start winning league titles, and that just really has not come to bear. Nebraska certainly had some thoughts of coming out of the Big 12 and joining the Big 10, and that it was going to restore its glory, and that certainly hasn't happened. I think that when you look at a divisionalist Big 10 moving forward, I think Iowa is still going to be consistent enough to get its wins against a lot of the other middling teams in the conference. You're not going to be drawing generally USC and UCLA on the same 9 conference game schedule or whatever. You're going to run into one of them. So they're going to be running into another team, at least in SC as known, maybe not UCLA, a team that will be above them in terms of talent or whatever. But I don't know if I necessarily see it completely upending the natural balance of how we see things. I think that going divisionless just crushes everybody in the West, because if you have to sit there and play any combination of Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State or whatever, I mean, save USC, you're still going to see losses regardless of it being divisional, non-divisional, whatever. But I do see, I think that in a lot of ways, the addition of SC and UCLA create some interesting battles on the recruiting landscape. I mean, you have Ohio State and Michigan both trying to recruit the state of California. Now you're going to have USC and UCLA trying to move in and recruit the Midwest. I'm going to be curious to see here in a few years how that has changed recruiting territories.
Yeah, does USC and UCLA benefit from being able to go to the Midwest for offensive linemen and linebackers? And I know I'm stereotyping. There are tremendous wide receivers and corners and et cetera from Illinois and Ohio and elsewhere. But then, the Midwestern teams heading out to California and having more of a draw to bring them out of the Golden State. Yeah, that's going to be a while before we have enough metrics on that to try to filter through all of that. Comments and questions, folks, leave them there in the chat. We will get to them here at the Voice of College Football. And we did not present our illustrious panel this week. We will do so by letting you know Steve Hellwagon's here, of course, from Bucknuts 247 Sports. Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Weekly. That's the podcast, BuckeyeHuddle.com as well. College Football Playbook here on YouTube. And then we've got Kevin, of course. Let's find the banner. It's the Big Me Kickoff Podcast. It's BuckeyeHuddle.com. What's going on this week, Kevin?
At this point, I've been watching SEC Media Days, taking a little bit of a break, obviously, to come and do this show, just trying to kind of keep track of the national stories, see things that may need to translate over to Big Ten Media Days when that gets ramped up next week. And just really starting to do a lot of get prepared for a lot of the August stories. Award watch list season is going to start on, I think, July 31st, if I remember the email that I got. Just getting ready for a lot of things of that nature and looking forward to the start of fall practice and everybody's favorite event, hotel check-in, where we get to stand around for 2 hours plus in the heat, watching players walk in with suitcases and bottles of water. It's my favorite thing too.
For the first time in forever, I'm missing SEC Media Days, at least immediately, the immediate coverage of it. Still in transition, just didn't even think about Media Days, and I need this and I need that. Was thinking now I'll get caught up come football season. So I'm not watching SEC Media Days, at least when it happens. So I am curious to know whether it be out of the SEC network crew or by the coaches themselves. At some point, the floodgates open about just that this conference cannot be matched. And the crew, for as great as they are, I could run down the talent. They do a tremendous job covering the SEC. I just remember just last year in particular, them showing themselves to be completely clueless about the rest of college football on numerous occasions, just having no idea who the quarterback for that team is, or that team actually plays a difficult schedule. Nobody plays a difficult schedule outside the SEC. This was hammered into our heads. I particularly remember last year by the SEC network crew that, again, when it comes to the SEC, top notch. When it comes to knowing what else is going on in college football, horrendous.
With all due respect to Joe Tessitore, every time I hear him talk,
The guy I was thinking of first and foremost, too.
It's a carnival barker. Like, you watch SEC Media Day and like, some coach will get done talking and Tessitore will be like, the most amazing. There's no reason to shout about, something we just watched a coach say. And so ever since he went to the SEC network, it's really, and it's gotten, I think, worse and worse. Like, he's always been a boisterous guy, but before I found it entertaining. Now it's more annoying than entertaining because, Kentucky versus Vanderbilt is not the biggest game in the world. I'm sorry. I understand you're forced to, do the play-by-play and let everybody know what amazing matchup this is. But, if it fell in the ocean, I don't know that anybody would notice.
Well, don't worry. Peter Burns will be right there telling everybody why Joe Tessitore is right too. I think I had to mute him on Twitter finally because I just couldn't deal with the. I'll use the term, Tony, did the carnival barking. It was just a little bit more than I could handle.
Well, with the way the climate is over there at ESPN, you have to be all in promoting the product or you're going to lose your job because they've pretty much decided it doesn't matter who any of those people are in front of the camera or behind the camera or at a keyboard or at an editing board or anywhere else. They can pay people $15 an hour because they're ESPN. So you better promote the product or, that's one way you try and curry favor to keep your job. So he's a good company man. He promoted the product. He crapped on the Big Ten. Good for him. So yeah, it's going to get even worse, I'm afraid.
Peter Burns, great guy. I'll loosely call him a friend. We've had him on many times here, maybe 20 times. Great guy and so forth. But yes, every so often I have to respond to a tweet from Peter Burns and say, come on, let's put this in context here.
We all got a job to do. We all have a product to move and everything else, and I get it, but Moses was not a member of the SEC. I mean, it's like legitimately, it just really gets to be a little much. And we all like to joke about the commercial with the pretty blonde girl saying it just means more and everything else or whatever. But come on.
I will say in defense of Peter Burns, I believe he believes all of that. Like, I don't think he's, I think he's a truther. He's an SEC. He's all in on the SEC, and he believes that. And honestly, it's the best conference in college football. So, you know, if I don't think that is not. I don't think that's debatable. So, you know, if you're espousing it as such, you know, that's fine. It's just the way Tessitore for me just it's over the top, and that's maybe just his natural delivery. It's not for me.
You know, there were times last season, one being championship weekend, and there were a few other times where Paul Feinbaum just completely dismissed everything else happening in the country, basically saying, you know, being asked about TCU at certain times during the course of the season and saying, you know, it doesn't really matter. I have no idea what they're doing. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares. I'm like, if you're going to take that attitude, then why cover the sport? Just say you're an SEC guy. This is all I cover. This is all I know. Be upfront about it, but don't pretend to cover the entire sport and then just you have no idea what's going on anywhere else. We've got Jordan Kapler here. Thank you so much for the contribution. Okay, what do we have here? Would you guys mind discussing Kevin Noon's tweet stating Wisconsin as the best wide receivers in the Big Ten?
All right, I'm going to jump in here first. It was a tweet by one of the national services, the one that I used to work for, going out there trying to go a little clickbaity and had a story about the best wide receiver rooms in the Big Ten. And the social media intern that I'm sure that put the tweet out was like, does Wisconsin have the best wide receivers in the Big Ten? And of course, I just sat there and I think I retweeted it with the Goodfellas laughing file or whatever. So that's Jordan is just trying to get me in trouble for something that I didn't do, which, you know, if you just wait long enough, I'll get myself in trouble. So yeah, it was quite comical and proved to me to be somebody writing the tweet that does not know jack blank about the Big Ten. They could have tried to do about anything else to do a little bit of a clickbait tease, but anybody who follows the Big Ten, Luke Fickell or not, knows that year one, Wisconsin certainly was not going to be the team, regardless of what Ohio State has.
To me, that was a meeting, a production meeting, content meeting where like everybody gets together. It's like, okay, we need this from every Big Ten team. And it's like, does blank have the best blank in the Big Ten? And then you just assign it to all of the different sites, because I think there's more than just Wisconsin that was phrased that way as well, if I recall. So I think it's one of those things where like, this will get people angry on Twitter and it'll get people talking, and we can, like, we have plausible deniability because it's the way we're doing it for everybody. We're asking this of everybody. So it's a series. It's not meant to be controversial. And so I don't know if it's then you click on a story as 800 words of just basically describing no. Like, well, I mean, 800 different ways to say no.
It ranked the teams 1 to 14 or whatever, and shock of all shocks, Ohio State was number 1. I mean, you know, it was I remember for years working at this network, and every year we would do the pieces, and you have to sit there and you have to write a segment about each thing, and you vote, and then, you know, whoever puts it together either truthfully sits there and tallies the votes and puts them the correct way, or you just look at the votes and like, and you just put the list out however the hell you want to yourself anyway. I got the tie-breaking vote, which is worth 20 votes. So not that I'm speaking from experience here by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, you do get some wild beliefs from, well, we got these 3 guys out of the portal and they appear to be pretty good. So we probably have the best, the best room there. So, but to Tony's point, it absolutely got its desired goal. We're talking about it. None of us work for that network, and we're talking about it even if we're laughing at it.
Well, there's a philosophy out there by some that as long as you put a question mark at the end of any crazy statement, then you can get away with it and just say, I'm just asking the question. I'm not stating Wisconsin's got the best wide receivers in the Big Ten, just asking the question. Okay. The other thing is, you don't have to be a hardcore college football fan. Just understand anything about the sport, and you couldn't have selected a more obvious position group that is the best, not just in the conference, but in the country. If you want to have people scrambling and digging, say, does Rutgers have the best linebacking core in the Big Ten? And if people be like, oh, well, maybe let's find out who these guys are and let's see. Probably not, but that sounds kind of crazy, but maybe. But that's a bit ludicrous.
Yeah, I don't see it as a case of them saying, hey, we'll get people to click on it. I just think that their social media intern is probably based in San Diego or Miami, Florida or something, and just doesn't really know any better.
I think the better question would have been that they could have gotten away with is, does blank have the second best wide receiver room in the Big Ten? Then now we can talk. Now it becomes a little legitimate discussion.
Well, we're just kind of ranting about whatever comes across the chat or across our minds. I don't have the list in front of me, but I would love to get I'll have to pull some out of my head in regards to, yes, out of my head, in terms of, I posted a video the other day. I did this with a few different divisions. Is this the year blank? So Ohio State, for example, is this the year that they lose 3 games for the first time since, pick your year in a sense, 2011, of course. They did technically lose over 3 games with the coaching transition, but with a permanent coach. Of course, you've got to go back with the post game to 2008 and the Fiesta Bowl loss. You've got to go back in the regular season to 2004. Is this the year that Michigan wins 3 consecutive Big Ten championships? You got to go back to 1992 was the last time they had won 5 consecutive Big Ten championships at that point. So just digging through, is this the year Rutgers or Maryland finished with a winning record in the Big Ten for the first time ever? They never have. All sorts of good nuggets there. Do you guys have any interesting, is this the year, or to respond to any of those? And I've got many more. Michigan State losing, posting a losing record in the Big Ten for the first time in 3 consecutive years, posting a losing record since 2006, prior to Mark D'Antonio.
Yeah, I have Michigan State with a losing record in the Big Ten. I also have them losing at Rutgers. So they've got a pretty bad schedule, tough schedule, going to Iowa and to Minnesota and their crossovers, and getting Michigan at home should be a loss. Getting Penn State at home should be a loss. I think that's going to be a tough one for them. Maryland or Rutgers having a winning record in the Big Ten. I'm just looking. I have Maryland 4-5 in the Big Ten, and they would have to win at Michigan State or at Nebraska maybe to get there. And I think both of those are doable. So if you're asking me, and I'm going to take this question as you are asking me, who has a better chance, Maryland or Nebraska or Rutgers? I'm going to say Maryland. And probably I'm going to say Maryland over Nebraska as well, in terms of who has a better chance to have a winning record in Big Ten play this year.
I actually, whenever I did this in May, probably sitting at a bar somewhere here in town and went through and played out every game. I actually have Maryland going 5-4 in league play this year, some way, somehow. I have Rutgers going 1-8. So I think there's my answer on that one. And then Nebraska, yeah, maybe next year. You can only fall for the banana in the tailpipe trick so many times before you get wise to it. It's taken me however many years Nebraska's been in the conference, to finally not overvalue them going into this year. So for all you bettors out there, put the farm on Nebraska, since I'm not feeling it.
I'm a Nebraska believer to a point this year, and I have not plotted it out. I agree Maryland is going to be right there fourth in the East, I would think. Purdue, do they go back down, losing their coach after winning a West championship? Do they go back down a bit? That's a good question there. Wisconsin, the West is kind of up for grabs. Like, who wants it? It certainly won't be Northwestern. They may not win a game the entire season after this fiasco. And with people probably running away from that like a rats off a sinking ship, I would think, as we've already started to see one of their top prospects has put his name into the portal before he's ever played a down for Northwestern. So I don't know. Iowa is always dangerous. They're always right there. And of course, now they've got the former Michigan quarterback there to try and resurrect his career, McNamara, I guess. So, and some other talented guys around him. When you talk about the receiver from Ohio State who went out there, the tight end from Michigan, the tight end they already had with Luke Lachette. So they're always good defensively. If they can, score an extra 8, 10, 15 points a game, then maybe they'll win some games. I don't know, but will 2 extra touchdowns make your day? So there you go.
Yeah, I think I have Illinois winning the East. Again,
wow, that's bold. The East
or the West. Sorry. The way that I'm looking at this on my spreadsheet is they are in the eastern part of the spreadsheet. I think I was just too busy smirking at Steve's comments about the 2 touchdowns and everything else. No, I have Illinois winning, but I still having them doing it 7-2 in the conference. I think it's really going to be one of these situations of where everybody short of Northwestern is going to be in it going into November. Northwestern will get 1 win. I mean, and I need to kind of go back through and change some picks because I think that they're just going to be an absolute mess this year. But they do play Howard University, and I think that they're going to win that game. But outside of that, all bets are off.
I think we'll know right away about Purdue in terms of where they are going to be in the Big Ten, because they've got Wisconsin on a Friday night at home, and the 4th game. The 5th game is Illinois at home, and the 6th game is at Iowa. So we'll find out quite a bit about them right there. I'm interested to see what happens. If Nebraska can go to Minnesota in week 1 and win that game, then next week, the week after that, they go to Colorado, and I'm not expecting anything from Colorado. So if they can go win those 2 games on the road, then they've got 2 easy wins at home. And then Michigan comes to town, and if Nebraska is 4-0 and Michigan comes to town, and that place is going to be crazy. So that will be an interesting game to watch. But I don't know if 2-2 is probably more likely than 4-0 for Nebraska to start.
I mean, I saw some people really trying to talk up transfer quarterback Jeff Sims for Nebraska, and I don't know. I mean, and I also saw people just in the chat talking up Hudson Card at Purdue. Hudson Card, I mean, obviously had a stacked deck against him at Texas as they brought in Quinn Ewers and they bring in Arch Manning and everything else, and that all kind of falls apart. And I know that we're not necessarily in the triple option days anymore at Georgia Tech. Obviously, Corey Dennis played at Georgia Tech, so I've learned to stop trashing Georgia Tech as much as I used to, but that's just not necessarily where I'm going and thinking that I have found my my solution. Hell, Adrian Martinez wasn't good enough for you guys out there, and now you're going to sit there and put it all on Jeff Sims' golden arm. I'm just not sure.
I saw a mock draft yesterday, 7-round mock draft that had Jeff Sims at the back of the 1st round. And not since the days of Mitch Leidner have I been so shocked to see a quarterback in the 1st round of a mock draft.
Mitch Leidner.
Mitch Leidner was shocked too.
That was Todd McShay doing it.
Wow.
Mitch Leidner did not get drafted, period, did he?
No, I think this is going into like his senior year, like before this time of year before the senior year, or like after maybe like immediately after the junior year. And it was bizarre. Like Andre Woodson was another one, and I think he was undrafted or maybe 7th round. But I remember Kuiper when after 2007 had Todd Beckman as maybe the top senior quarterback or one of the top 2 or 3 senior quarterbacks heading into this senior season. So it's always interesting to see how these quarterbacks rise and fall and then rise again for some of them.
Well, hell, with Beckman going through Penn State, like into Michigan State, we were all looking at his numbers and comparing him to his predecessors. Like, hey, this kid isn't bad, rather than really thinking of, hey, this system isn't that bad. And then we know kind of what happened to Beckman, and he developed a serious case of the yips over a couple game stretch, and that was that.
Yeah, Mitch Leidner, undrafted, and then invited to walk a couple blocks down the street and jump on the practice squad for the Minnesota Vikings, and then that was history.
That way, the Vikings didn't have to pay for lodging.
Yeah.
No reload package.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, Nebraska. My Nebraska take, for one thing, is that they have not reached a bowl game. They now have the longest drought in the Power 5.
Really?
Wow.
2016. Yeah, Rutgers, because Rutgers got the gift.
They got the APR bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, they got the exactly. They got the APR against a Wake in the Gator Bowl COVID year. Nebraska has the longest bowl drought, 2016, in college football.
I have them going. Yes. I have them going 6-6, but that's what they win at the end of the year against Iowa in Lincoln.
The Heroes game. Not sure who's really the hero, but yeah, whatever.
8 wins shouldn't be a big deal, but Illinois has not done that in back-to-back years since 1990.
Wow.
They could do that this year with an 8-win season.
Juice Williams never went back-to-back seasons with 8 wins.
No.
Not everybody
could play Ohio State enough.
Not everybody could be Lou Tepper.
Yes. Maryland has won a bowl game at the conclusion of these last 2 seasons. They would win a 3rd consecutive bowl game for the first time in school history. 3 consecutive years.
See, it's working for them. They know their role.
As long as they don't get their quarterback destroyed out there, they're actually pretty good. But they just, I mean, it's sort of like somebody who just doesn't necessarily know how to ease into the turns or whatever with Mike Locksley there, and he gets his quarterbacks killed. And it just I have no faith in November Maryland or beyond, because generally at that point they've completely burned out the clutch, and it's just, you know, it's just where gravity takes them.
So I think Steve nailed it. They know their role. Go 7-5. Go beat Virginia Tech or NC State or some ACC middling in a bowl game just to boost the Big Ten's bowl record to make us look a little bit better.
Give Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan a good look for 4 quarters. Give them a good look to prepare them for the tougher games. Know your role. Stay in yo lane.
Well, the fact that Ohio State gets Maryland in October 7th or whatever, Talia Tagovailoa should be good to go and everything else at that point. So I think Ohio State will get a pretty good look from Maryland, maybe not for 4 quarters. We know that whatever the Ted U Capital One Stadium, whatever, seems to be a little bit more difficult for the sheer fact that at the visitors' locker room there's not enough room for them to even tape up their players, and they have to tape them up on the field. I mean, this isn't the ACC, baby. You gotta put some money into your facilities.
Iowa, is this the year? Iowa posts a, Brian Ferentz, are you listening? Top 50 offense nationally. Now we'll take out the COVID year. They only played 8 games. So full season here, top 50 offense. Does anybody want to gather a guess on when the last time Iowa posted a top 50 offense?
I will say, was Drew Tate the quarterback, or was Brad Banks the quarterback, or was it Ricky Stanzi?
It would have been either Tate or Nathan Chandler.
So like 2005, 6?
2006. Last top 50 offense for
That's
Iowa.
the tater tot, I think.
I believe so. They tied for a Big Ten championship in 2004. So this would be the year that they win a Big Ten championship for the first time in 2004. But of course, it would be outright now. When's the last time Iowa won a Big Ten outright championship?
Oh my gosh. 83, maybe? I don't
83
know.
was Illinois. You're right
82?
there, Steve. I know you're
82?
just flipping Illinois and Iowa.
82
Getting their rear ends kicked by UCLA in the Rose Bowl. 85. Chuck
85.
Long's almost Heisman year.
Okay, 85.
It's their last outright Big Ten championship.
Yeah.
And just looking to be top 50 last year, total offense, you only needed like 405 yards per game to be top 50. And you should be able to do that. And where were they, like 300 and what, or 200 and what?
Thinking hoops. They were like 131, 129. Those two numbers stick in my head. 129 or 131.
Pull up stats from last.
All I remember is they were 123 the year before, and I remember saying they've lost their center, who's maybe the best center in America. They've lost their best running back. They lost, of course, Charlie Jones, their best wide receiver. So I'm like, personnel-wise, they should be worse, but it's statistically impossible for them to be worse, right? But they were.
They were 129 in the nation, only ahead of New Mexico, and they were significantly ahead of New Mexico. Iowa averaged 251.5 yards of offense per game, ahead of New Mexico's 228.1.
Wow.
251 yards of total offense a game.
Nuts.
When was the last time? I'm just trying to find the last time Iowa was inside the top 87 offenses. And I'm now checking. I'm all the way down to 2017. I'm guessing that'll be the year from the 55 points that they got on Ohio State. But no, they were 117th that year. So, boy, oh boy, it was not just a 1 year thing. That's for sure. 121st in 2016.
What offensive coordinator keeps his job for 6 years, going on year number 7 with this level of production?
I know why Steve picked 1983 for Iowa. That was the year our Lord and Savior Brian Ferentz was born.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Goodness gracious.
Yakov, appreciate you being here. Yakov, you can always count on Yakov to bring back a name from the distant past. Yakov is seeing shades of Lyle Alzado in Caden Curry.
Hope not.
Yes,
I was going to say
before my time. I only know him from like TV.
No, I mean, I remember watching Lyle Alzado.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and I pulled up his wiki page here just because I wanted to see his height at 6'3". Caden Curry wishes he was 6'3" at this point. Yeah, I am the king of anti-comps. I just really don't like hanging that on a kid right there. Alzado was just, I mean, an incredible player, and I think that at least when you're talking about somebody in their potential of just being an absolute disruptor, I mean, that would be great. But yeah, Alzado was a tortured soul. So really, hopefully, not any other comparisons there.
Yeah, when you think Lyle Alzado, for as great a player as he was, as Kevin said, you think personality, and then you think about his plight more so than his great playing on the field. But yes, the Orange Crush defense, and then he won a Super Bowl with the Raiders, and then he finished up with the Cleveland Browns and played in conference championship games that ended poorly. Thank you for that, Yakov. Number 77, Lyle Alzado. Great stuff there. All right. While we're looking for a final comment or two from the chat, let's go to Wisconsin's actually 8-1 in its last 9 bowl games. Minnesota's looking for 6 straight bowl trips for the first time ever, or they've made 6 straight. They'd be going for 7 consecutive, and they've won 6 straight bowl games as Minnesota.
I have them just barely making it, going 6-6. And that's with a win to start the season against Nebraska, which I just remember last year, everybody was so excited for Nebraska, and they're finally going to get over the hump, and then they just start the season by finding a way to lose. You're like, well, I guess it's the same old Nebraska, maybe next year, and we'll see if Nebraska can get that win against Minnesota. That's going to be a big one, and I think it's a big one for both of them. And I wonder, you know what was fun last year is the how annoyed Scott Frost was by PJ Fleck. Like, as PJ Fleck comes out there and says all of his catchphrases, and Scott Frost gets up and said something about, like, we're not big on sloganeering or something like that, and it's like, oh yeah,
We're winning. We're winning.
So I wonder if
who of us is not annoyed by PJ Fleck?
Gutting out close
Oh,
games.
I love PJ Fleck.
Oh my God, the dude is so exhausting. Oh,
well, yeah, you got to
baby.
take it in
I agree with
doses.
that.
You got to take it in doses. No, I wouldn't want to have to, work with the guy or be around him all day, every day. But when you bring up Scott Frost and PJ Fleck, are two guys any more opposite, where Scott Frost gets out of bed every day grumbling versus PJ Fleck, I'm Mr. Inspiration to all. Yeah. But PJ Fleck still has a job, and he's still doing rather well.
Well, and I think it helps that Minnesota realized the error in their ways of firing Glenn Mason, and like talking about Maryland knowing their role. I think Minnesota has decided to find their role. Although I think we can throw this stuff out the window once the 12-team expansion or the 12-team playoff expansion goes, because programs that are like on the brink, ranked 17th, they're going to want, like, if we can get one time into that playoffs, like, I wonder how much of an issue that becomes when you just keep falling short and 9 wins aren't quite good enough. Because I think the Big Ten will send at least 3 teams routinely to the playoffs, and if you're going to give 2 of those 3 to Ohio State, Michigan, or USC, somebody else is going to have to try to fight and get in there, 3 out of every 5 years or something. And so those programs, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, even, I wonder how annoyed or unhappy or impatient they get if they're not making the playoffs, even though they'll still get all the money and all the benefits. They just won't make the playoffs.
World needs ditch diggers too.
Row the shovel.
All right, folks, Buckeyes Live. It's typically on Wednesday. We will be here next Friday after Big Ten Media Days on Wednesday and Thursday. So next Friday, hit that bell for the notifications to know when we go live. That way you get notified. That's why it's called the notification bell. Next up for us is we're going to go live with an SEC Media Days here in a few hours at 3 Eastern. And we've got Iowa and Nebraska coming up at 5:30 and 7 tonight as well. So check out those shows, Iowa and Nebraska, for your Big Ten brethren, or to troll whatever your approach. All right, Kevin, let us know what's going on with you this week.
Yeah, I'm just I'll probably try and do a Big Me kickoff show on Friday live. Until then, I'm kind of monitoring the the other media days, SEC Media Day front and center right now, and may get a couple of thoughts out about that if anything so moves me.
Tony.
Just dropped a new episode of Buckeye Weekly today. It's a listener questions podcast. Some of the topics we talk about are, is this the year that Ryan Day finally lets the backups cook and lets them play offense in the fourth quarter of games? We were asked which if Big Ten coaches were social media platforms, which would they be? So we talk about that, just stuff like that. And then also I'm doing a series of the Ohio State's ranking the 10 best playmakers on the Ohio State offense, and I dropped number 8 today. And then later on tonight, I'll probably have something up about Bryson Rogers, the freshman receiver, looking at his high school highlights and things like that. BuckeyeHuddle.com.
Now, if somebody wanted to put some kind of legitimate but controversial unit ranking out there, they would say, is the Ohio State running back room better than the Michigan running back room or the best in the Big Ten? That might spark some legitimate controversial conversation.
If you assign point values to each of the running backs on a scale of like 1 to 10, who I think Ohio State's room is deeper. I think that is true, but Blake Corum is really, really good, and he's really, really proven. So,
yeah. Steve, what's going on at Bucknuts this week?
Well, I honestly should have taken this week off because we are moving. I live in Pataskala, out on the east side of Columbus, far east, far out, Licking County. And we are actually moving 3 miles out into the country toward Granville to a house, not a new house. It's been there a while, new to us. And our truck is coming tomorrow, and we have to completely vacate the premises here in the next week. And I'm going to be gone a couple days next week with Indianapolis coming up. So I'm jamming about 10 days worth of moving into 3 or 4 here this week. And let's just say I'm largely failing at most of that. I've been to games for 30 some years, and I've got something from just about every game I ever attended here. I'm a bit of a hoarder, I guess. And I've taken more stuff to recycling. And let me just say, anybody thinking about moving, think about it long and hard and plan it out months in advance. That's what I would advise. Or just don't do it at all if you don't have to, and leave it for your kids after you're dead and gone to sift through it, because I got to tell you, this has not been good. So yeah, there you go. But no, we're going to get through it this week, and then as I say, driving to Indianapolis on Tuesday. So looking forward to that.
For somebody who's been clearing out a family member's condo for the last 6 months, I can relate, Steve. And that's just a condo. It's like, it's just a small condo, not a big deal. But 20 hours later, you're still digging through stuff and throwing stuff away and taking another carload to Goodwill and on and on and on. Absolutely. All right, folks, appreciate you being here. Check out Kevin, Tony, and Steve's work as they all go to Big Ten Media Days. And we will be here with SEC next at 3 o'clock Eastern and some guests coming on at that point. We will see you all next week.